Welcome to State of Belief, continuing coverage of the 2020 Democratic National Convention across America. Back with me again is political management expert Greg Lebel, and we're ready to look at day 3 of this unconventional convention. What was the best moment of tonight?
Boy, that's a tough one because tonight was, well, the best moment, I have to say, and again, this is not surprising, it almost becomes cliche. We heard Barack Obama, the poet and preacher again, which is always a powerful experience. I think the nature of his comments fall into a somewhat different category than that. It was dark, it was foreboding, but Barack Obama continues to have that ability to just encapsulate stuff. As I said, it's sort of poet and preacher all rolled into one, and it was just mesmerizing. I was getting texts from all kinds of people saying, "God, I miss him. Can we just vote for him again?" You know, that's sort of that's that. So I guess I would have to say that, with lots of other things going on that I'm sure we'll talk about.
Well, okay, so hold on, because we're going to come right back to that. Let me ask you this: what did you think about Hillary Clinton? What were your thoughts as she spoke?
I've always had Hillary Clinton speaking has always been sort of a challenge for me. She's not a great speaker. She's a brilliant woman. But her speaking skills are not her best asset. I remember at one of the conventions she followed Bill in speaking, and I thought, that's just a mistake. You just don't know. Well, no one should have to follow Bill Clinton. Let's start there. It was solid. I mean, she talked from experience. I think she reminded us that 4 years ago we thought this was in the bag. And look what we got as a result, and please don't make that mistake again. And I think that was the message that she could really deliver better than anybody else. She said, we've learned that you can beat Donald Trump. I've learned that you can win by almost 3 million votes and still lose. Those were important things for people to hear again. But I thought it was a solid presentation.
Yeah, I thought there was even somewhat of a confessional tone to what she said, because she was being very honest about what happened, and that she was saying, I know what can happen, and you all better not let this happen again.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of putting it. I can hear that. Yeah, that makes sense.
Did we hear the theme, and did we really see it playing out? A more perfect union?
I think so. I think it was. The theme might have. I think it might. This tonight. The theme was a little bit hard to connect to, I think, to a lot of what we saw was going on. So I didn't feel it as strongly as I did on night 1 and night 2. What I heard was this appeal, a strong appeal to women, which is appropriate. This is the night that Kamala Harris was nominated for vice president, so there was a strong appeal to women. There was, and we heard this in Harris's speech as well when we got to there, a strong appeal to women, to minorities, and to youth. So I guess one can talk about that in the context of a more perfect union. So yeah, I guess it was there, but that's sort of really what I was hearing throughout the whole thing. There was strong appeals to those three groups, which is appropriate, and I think in some ways maybe trying to offset the not preponderance, but the many appearances of Republicans over the first 2 days. Tonight was about Democrats.
Yeah.
It was about the women. I was about the groups of people that the party knows it needs at its core if it's going to pull this off. Again, women, minorities, and youth. And I think that seemed to me what we were about tonight.
Well, so how did Senator Harris do tonight?
I thought it was a good speech. As I think is watching it, does anyone ever remember the speech of a vice presidential nominee? I certainly I certainly don't. But this was, I mean, this was as good as it gets. I did find myself paying more attention to the setting in which she was giving it. I think maybe partly because they tried to make it look like the stage of at a convention, which may have been a mistake, because I don't think I wanted to be reminded that that wasn't, that image, that whole dynamic wasn't there. So I'm not sure that I liked the stagecraft tonight, which I think had something to do with it. But I thought it was a solid speech. She introduced herself. I learned a lot about her family that I didn't know. She talked about the presidential nominee, which of course is what she has to do. And I thought she ended really strong. I thought that call to action at the end was very strong. And yeah, I think she did a good job. I have to say also, I found myself thinking, I can't wait to see her standing on a debate stage with Mike Pence. I think that's where we're really going to see her shine.
Yeah. Well, I think, and I don't even claim to know her very well. I've seen her in action some. But I've been a little bit surprised by the emotional side of her, that there is that there, and it comes out in no way looking fake, but really looking honest about what she's feeling inside her and how she feels about people she's with.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think that is what we saw both in the clips that they showed and in both the announcement speech when she joined the ticket and tonight. And again, for most of us, our only exposure to her, and we talked about this briefly last night, was those primary debates. And that was not a setting where that kind of emotion really was evident. In fact, she was somewhat uneven. Again, I think that has as much to do with just the nature of the way those debates sort of played out. I liked some of the stuff. I happen to have a soft spot for when people talk about the beloved community. Yeah. And she mentioned it twice in her remarks. Calling up Dietrich Bonhoeffer, calling up Dr. King. It was an important reference, I think, for her to make. And I think again it got to that somewhat understated so far. It comes up on occasion, but Joe Biden's faith, particularly Joe Biden's faith, I think has been sort of a subtext in there. And I think once again, that was just sort of calling that to mind, which I think was good. I think it was important.
Well, I'm after listening to you, I think we may both agree that the stars of the night were the two people that should be stars.
I think that's right.
And I with Obama, I say exactly the same thing you did. And I was wondering, okay, am I going to just be let down now by her, not because she's not doing well, but being so grateful for what he said? And actually, I actually thought when after she got to speaking as she did, and especially at the end, that she was giving some hope for what Obama had laid down and said we had to have.
I couldn't agree with you more. I'm going to say basically the same thing using somewhat different words. Obama said, here's what's at stake. I mean, he talked about, he said, I wrote it down, this administration will tear our democracy down in order to win. I mean, this was dark. I mean, this was really making us clear that this is about about our democracy. And you're right. And then we got to Senator Harris's speech, and it seemed to be about what comes after.
Yeah.
the young, the next generation. Through Obama was talking about, this is what we're dealing with now. Her speech seemed to look more sort of beyond that. Even her presence, I mean, just the very nature of this candidacy seemed to be about what comes next. So it's interesting that someone should take the theme of hope away from Barack Obama. But I think that I agree with you 100%. I think we're saying the same thing. I think that's what we both sensed in the relationship of those two speeches.
Well, and I want to say again, I can't get away from what Obama did. He was a genius tonight at being totally honest, totally descriptive in a correct way, and yet at the same time, I was hearing that from someone that I didn't think was putting someone else down. It was saying so much, we're in trouble, and we've got to get out of trouble. Yeah. And I'm going to tell you some reasons we're in trouble and how to get out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, what was tragic is that he even had to say that. I mean, that's the tragedy in this. Yeah. And I think that I don't think it's in Barack Obama's nature to take that tack. Right. We have not seen that. I think we saw a little bit of it at John Lewis's funeral. He began this thread there, where he talked about the importance of voting, the importance of dealing with these challenges to voting, the opportunity to vote, and so on and so on. But he took this to another place tonight, and I think. Yeah, I don't think it's something that he's comfortable doing. It's not something we've seen him doing, which made it all the stronger, I think, the more powerful in hearing him, seeing that he's been moved to this point. Now, Michelle Obama sort of led us there the other night as well, but this was a quite remarkable speech for the predecessor of the current president, even of a different party. It was pretty intense. And important to say.
I want to point out one other thing, and it was in her speech, kind of, but there was one line in Obama's speech that just made the night for me. No single American can fix this country alone. That was as powerful and poignant an indictment of an entire campaign and presidency as I've ever heard.
I hadn't thought of it after it happened, but when I know exactly the point you meant, because it brought me back to Trump standing on that stage 4 years ago saying, "I alone can fix it." Right. And that, yes, and I have to assume that was intentional, and it was a very powerful repudiation of that hubris and a sense of self-regard that sort of rules Donald Trump. Yeah, I'm with you. I reacted the same way as you did to that. I thought that's reference that just brought me back to that weird, scary speech at the Republican convention 4 years ago.
And then Kamala said, "We may stumble, we may make mistakes. We need you. You are important." And so I just felt like that all just came together really well.
Yeah. And Obama made the same point. He talked about this, counting on the Trump people are counting on our cynicism. Mm-hmm. And yes, I think they both sort of made that point, and I thought she did a particularly good job at sort of, again, that sort of that sense of moving forward was really important in her remarks.
I have to ask you a question, and this gets away from just talking about tonight, but you probably saw it too. The New York Times this afternoon sent out this piece saying that the competition now was becoming very close and that there are really 1 to 2 points difference between, and I think they said in 15 places that we've got to win. Anybody has to win to win. Tell me how that all came about so quickly when we've been hearing 10 points, 8 points, 9 points, 12 points.
Yeah. I'm anxious to see a few more polls come out because we saw a hint of that in a CNN poll that came out several days ago, and now this is the second one, and other polls are still coming out showing a wider gap. So I'm not sure what's going on with the polling right now. I think I'm trying to be cautiously optimistic and sort of hang on and see what else we get. We are at that point where things are sort of with the conventions, going through the conventions, things are sort of disrupted right now. So I'm trying not to get too nervous about what we're seeing in the polls right now. That leads to the question about convention bumps. We've always seen convention bumps. It's going to be interesting whether these kinds of conventions show any kind of bump. Because it's such a different sort of experience, and it's hard to tell. Somebody was saying earlier tonight on something I was watching that if next week Donald Trump and the Republicans do what Donald Trump is inclined to do in these kinds of events, the commentator said something like, I'll give him all the time he wants.
I heard.
And I think that's an interesting point too. It's hard to imagine Donald Trump constrained next week. I could be wrong, but it's hard even to think about what they're going to spend the 4 days talking about.
Yeah.
I can't quite figure that out. He has certainly not shown any sense of or given any hint of what a second term agenda might be. Yeah. And they can't figure out what their message is. So I don't know what they're going to do next week. Yeah. I think we'll see some unsettling in the polls in at least through next week, and then once we get through the conventions, I think things will settle down a little bit and we'll get a clearer picture. But it seems odd. It just seems odd to me that there could be that much of a shift in that many places within such a short period of time. But we'll know more. I mean, we'll see more as we move on.
One more thing before we get off, I want to try out on you. Every night before, as we sign off, I've been talking about the fact that you're a veteran of several presidential campaigns. I know you've been in places where you were in tight places where you had to give the candidate that was running information, but you also had to give them consultation and what you thought was best. So having said that, what if tonight Mr. Biden called you and said, what do I need to do tomorrow night? What would you say?
Oh, that's a good question, Welton. What Biden needs to do tomorrow night is continue what Kamala Harris started tonight. He needs to talk about what comes next. We have spent 3 days really spending a lot of time looking at how Joe Biden got to where he is, and it's been very powerful, very important. That's a big part of the role of conventions, to give us a sense of who the candidate is. Funny, the guy's been around for 50 years, but there's so much I think that most people don't know about him. He needs to be prepared. I think that he needs to be prepared to say what comes next with the Biden administration, for the very simple reason that there are, again, we've talked about the polls already and we'll see, but there have been indications that there are a lot of people who are ready to fire Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. The challenge is, and this was I always thought this was sort of the challenge that John Kerry failed to meet in 2004. He ran as I'm not I'm not George W. Bush. And that gets people. People say, "Well, yeah, I'm not really comfortable with the incumbent and so on and so forth." But the thing you've got to do next is show them why they should vote for you, and that's what Joe Biden has to do. And it's not about his biography; it's about his vision. So he's got to be able to nail that vision piece and give people a sense of how their lives are going to change for the better with him in the White House rather than the guy that's there now. And if you don't do both of those pieces, it's very difficult. I think it can be very difficult to win. So that would be my advice.
Greg Lebel is Professor Emeritus of Political Management at George Washington University and a veteran, as I've said, of several presidential campaigns. You see a little bit of why that would be. Most recently, he was working for Pete Buttigieg in New Hampshire. Thanks for staying up late with us again tonight, Greg. It's been fun. Watch our Day 4 convention wrap up tomorrow, as well as for interviews with leaders, activists, and delegates all week at stateofbelief.com. I'm Welton Gaddy. Thanks for watching. Okay.